All right, on this video, what I want to show you is the idea about what should happen on the project. So you have a lot of content. You've got written content, you've got bags of pictures, and there are two goals to the project. One is to design something that looks really, really awesome. And the second thing is to use the grid creatively. So if you're going to be using a lot of big pictures and lots of white space, you're not going to get the second goal. You're only possibly going to get the first one. And I want to show you some ideas to think about as you start to approach this. So the first thing you want to think about is that the client wants a lot of pictures. They don't want single one big picture stuff. And the grid gives you opportunities for creating senses of contrast, large versus small, textural versus more defined information. Visually, the goal of the grid should have this sense of dancing. Even though the layouts aren't the same, it should feel like it's all really well organized and that the pieces all hold together well. So if you watch how this just moves through, you see that even though the grid isn't used at all the same on any given spread, it has a sense of continuity. What you'll notice, however, is that when spreads use continuity elements and or flow lines, and here I'm looking specifically right here, right? Oops, sorry. Notice how these two spreads flow nicely. Also, look at the vertical line here, the vertical alignment. Notice how that really tends to make it feel organized, where if you don't use the same pieces, it tends to jump a little bit, but still feels good, okay? So like these two spreads share very few structural similarities, yet they do feel like they hold together. Now, you can also think about this in terms of a small location of alignment. You know, just those little things that hold these two layouts together are just a simple organization of space in one spot. Even that will hold it together. Okay, so this is just one example. You can use wide crops. You can use tall crops. You can use small, different shapes. And that's the beauty of this project, is that the grid allows you to create all these interesting shapes, and the images can be cropped specifically to fill those spaces. So it's going to create this really nice sense of organization. Now here's another piece. This was actually the very first crack at this project a few years ago. And while I don't feel like the project used the grid as a continuity element, in other words, things really jumped around, I do like the way the design was handled and the way the continuity elements of the elements now are continuous. So, for example, let's see, kind of picked up this vertical panel with thin, elegant lines, and then we don't see it for a while, but then it comes back as a horizontal. And then we don't see it for a while. And then it comes back again. And so you don't have to do the same thing on every single page. You can say, okay, well, I'm going to have a treatment like the black background with the text and so on. And I'm going to use that in different ways. Now, as you can see, I don't feel like this individual used the grid as effectively as a continuity element. There's a lot of different things going on, but again, this is the first time out of the gate, and I was learning a lot when I was teaching the project, and they were learning a lot while they were trying to figure out how to use the tools. But it has a nice sense of continuity anyway. You know, it has this, it feels like it holds together, even if there is some elements of incongruity. Like here, there's a nice solid horizontal flow line right here, and then that holds these two layouts nicely together. Missed opportunities down the gutter. In this case, sometimes having a large element with some negative space, and then, larger element with negative space, then sometimes it's more collage-like, and you should consider that as a possibility. You don't have to have, always one big picture. Okay, so, but it had this particular piece had a lot of neat things. This project has some elements that I think were good and some that were not so good. I thought the typography was kind of fun, and the addition of the triangular element as a continuity element throughout the design was kind of a neat touch. Throws a little bit of oh, that's a different kind of thing into it. In a situation like this, notice the top line here, and how that holds those two spreads together really nicely. Also, the vertical at the gutter, notice how that holds it together very nicely. And then, here tends to jump a little bit, right? This layout probably could have been enhanced by not jumping back and forth. It has a little bit, it struggles a little bit in that way. Here's opportunities that probably could have been maximized. For example, this line right here, picks up on the top of this element versus the bottom of that element. Would have probably been stronger had this dropped down to here and this dropped down to here, because then you would have had this bottom element. Uh-oh, now it's flipped out on me. Okay, there we go. Weird. Okay, so again, notice how the images tend to dance. In this particular design, each page has only a few images, and for the most part, there aren't a lot of images going on in this particular design. So it doesn't necessarily, in my view, take full advantage of the strength of this particular kind of grid. Okay, so keep that kind of idea in mind as you progress. This design, let's go to the top, suffered typographically. The font choice is kind of funky. The overlay with the color is sort of struggling. The sand colored text with the sand color on the sand, kind of struggling a bit. It's an opportunity for some playful typography. That first page, or even just the title, is really something you should consider as you think about this design. It's like you're setting a typographic stage when you set up the first title, and taking advantage of that allows you to introduce typefaces, styles, color, treatment, and so on. So, but the design itself worked pretty well. Again, this individual was using the grid pretty consistently and pretty solidly, but it doesn't feel like it's dancing like the other pieces. So it has a little bit of a discontinuity going on. Opportunities like what was going on right in here versus what's happening here. That this little cross right in there is an opportunity that was missed, right? So suddenly that it tends to jump a little bit. So you want to think about that, okay? You also can, if you create a neat layout that you really like, you can repeat that layout. It's not as though it's the only time you can use it. You can create that layout and then three spreads later, repeat it or flip it. That's a neat thing to do, where if you have a layout that you really like, say you took this on one page with a big on the other, the next spread could have this layout flipped on this side and the big image on the other. So you can consider repeating or bringing back elements that you like. It's not like you're stuck making a new layout every single time. Okay, so think about that. This design had some elements that I really liked. For example, adding this interesting kind of continuity element, this multicolored striped graphic, which is kind of fun. It has a large logo, and that's what a lot of people do with this project, is they design a logo for the resort as well, because you're not provided with that. So feel free to do that if you'd like to. I felt the border treatment was a little heavy. I think I said that in the lecture. But it adds some vibrancy. I think it would have been better if it had been kicked back, or maybe a very light color or something like that, something that wasn't quite so dominant. But in this case, using color fields is an option. It allows you to create some neat kind of effects. Kind of mixing things up. There was a lot of inconsistency in this design. There's background images in some, there's color backgrounds in others, there's texturized images on another one yet, full images on another one, color blocks again, collage type imagery. So it really had, it struggled with a lot of continuity problems. But you can see some neat things that were going on. The idea of playful positioning of the elements, not necessarily always being related tightly. So there's some fun possibilities that you might consider. And even here, the two designs, the two spreads hold together nicely, even though they're not the same. They feel like they're dancing together. That's the feeling you want to achieve when you do this. And here, bam, we jump into these big, huge background graphics. Haven't seen that before, So you can see that while this project had some strengths, it also had a lot of continuity problems that could have been fixed with more work. And this is the kind of stuff that you'll run into as you start to work with this project, is that you're going to, start trying a lot of different things, and you got to figure out what you want to work with and then discard the ideas that aren't working so well. This project was nice, but safe. It didn't really break any new ground. It's really clean. Typography's nice and tight. But there's some problems with it. It doesn't really take advantage of the grid very well. We see some top line issues, right? Say, for example, images that come up to here, and then where the title is and so on the next spread. The title stays on the same line, but it would have been so much better had that title maintained its consistency. Right here, there was an alignment opportunity. So that would have been something where, that would have been useful to carry through on the two layouts, So those are the kinds of things you want to think about. And again, it doesn't take full advantage of the grid. And so it struggled with that. You want to think about your alleys. What are you going to do with your alleys? Are you going to be tight, or are you going to be loose? You kind of want to think about, it doesn't have to be always the same, but you want to think about that, okay? You want to think about what you're doing and how does it work, okay? Here you can see missed opportunities again, right? We got elements that come up higher for no reason, and then on the next spread, they drop down. So it lacks that sense of continuity that it needed badly, And here, even these three spreads, say, look at this, for example. Look where the title is here, look where it is here, and then look where it is there. So even between these two, it moves. So these are the situations that you want to think about, going, okay, let me think about, do I want to have it here, or there, So you see how it just jumps, every single title is different. So you want to really think about how you're going to handle that from spread to spread to spread. Be careful of things like text over images. That's something that is a little tricky to do well, and so I would caution you on doing that. It can be done, but you want to be careful. All right, I got a couple more up here. So now, this was a piece that I felt was a pretty fun piece. I should have let me just jump to page 1 here real fast. Okay, so here there was a problem with the gutter here. I'm not sure exactly what. So when you see this weird stuff happening in the middle, it wasn't intentional. I'm not sure what's going on the display, but here, treating the grid with color areas, a little kind of a continuity color bar going on, using color in the type, playing with column lengths. There's a lot you can do with varying column lengths, and playing with differentiations in font size. So, here the idea of kind of mirroring. Remember what I was talking about? Taking a layout on one page and then flipping it on the other. Not exactly the same, but in here she was using these kind of strong islands of photographs with the text kind of going towards the outside a little bit. That was a kind of a neat technique, And again, we're trying to take a look at, that sense of dancing. The gutter's kind of causing some visual problems with that, but I think you get the idea. So this is a very effective way of handling it, these big islands of imagery, and then having your text be in the negative spaces, Oh, interesting. She forgot a spread. Which one is better? This one or that one? So I like that one more. But it was a very nice piece, right? It had a very solid sense of continuity all throughout the entire design. So if we go through this, you can see it really kind of plays nicely. So what else? I guess that was it. All right, so I hope this video helped explain some things, and feel free to stop the video and look at the layouts, study how they're done, pick some ideas from that. All right, so have some fun.